The words hung in the air light and sharp, like slivers of glass. "It's not for people your age, Mom." Jennifer said it. My daughter-in-law. She said it with a bright, tight smile that didn't touch her eyes. Her hand rested on my son's arm. A gesture of ownership. Of alliance. My David said nothing. He just looked at the glossy cruise brochure on the coffee table, its pictures of blue water and white ships impossibly bright under the recessed lighting of their living room. He traced the outline of a deck chair with his finger. He did not look at me. That was the answer. His silence was always the answer. I sat in their beige armchair, the one they called modern, which felt to me like sitting on a well-designed box. It offered no comfort. No embrace. My own chair at home, a deep burgundy velvet worn smooth over 30 years, was a hug in furniture form. It knew the shape of my grief and my quiet joys. This chair knew nothing. Sunday dinner. It had been my tradition. After church, my home would fill with the scent of roasted chicken, collard greens simmering with smoked turkey, and the sweet, earthy promise of a sweet potato pie cooling on the counter. My table was where my family was built. But they were busy. Life was fast. So Sunday dinner moved to their house, where the food came in plastic containers from expensive grocery stores, and the conversation skimmed across the surface of things like a flat stone on water. I had brought a pie tonight. Habit. Hope. It sat on their granite countertop uncut. Jennifer had glanced at it. "Oh, Elara, you shouldn't have. The kids don't really eat that kind of thing." My grandson Michael was 16. He ate everything. But I said nothing. I just nodded. Now the cruise. For Christmas. A big family trip. Them and Jennifer's parents. The children. A week in the Caribbean. "We just think you'd be more comfortable at home," Jennifer continued, her voice syrupy with false concern. "All that walking. The heat. And the activities are really geared for a younger crowd." I looked at my hands resting in my lap. They were wrinkled, yes. The veins stood out like rivers on a map. But they were strong hands. They had braided my daughter's hair, held my husband's hand as he passed, planted gardenias that bloomed every summer without fail, and kneaded the dough for 1,000 loaves of bread. They had held my son, David, when he was small enough to fit in the crook of my arm. These hands had done work. They were not frail. I thought of my husband, James. He would have laughed. A deep rumbling sound that would have shaken the whole room. He would have looked at Jennifer and said, "Elara's got more life in her little finger than you've got in your whole yoga-toned body." He would have said it. And he would have turned to David and waited for him to stand with his mother. But James was gone. And David was tracing the shape of a ship he would sail on without me. I didn't say a word. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I didn't try to explain that I walked 2 miles every morning, that I still led the alto section in the church choir, that my passport tucked away in my cedar chest was still valid. I just listened. I watched. I saw the relief in my son's shoulders when I simply nodded. He was spared the chore of defending his wife, of managing his mother's feelings. My silence was a gift to him, the last one I would ever give. I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't a crack. It wasn't a break. It was more like a settling. The final settling of a house on its foundation, after which no more movement is possible. The structure is what it is. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of empty chatter. I smiled. I asked Michael about his schoolwork. I complimented Jennifer's bland, store-bought chicken. I played the part they had written for me. The quiet, agreeable, slightly dotty old woman who was grateful for any crumb of attention they threw her way. When it was time to go, David walked me to the door. "You okay, Mom?" he asked, his eyes finally meeting mine in the dim light of the porch. "I'm fine, David," I said. And I was. For the first time in a long time, I was perfectly terrifyingly fine. The hurt was there. A low familiar hum beneath the surface. But something else was present now, too. A cold, clear stillness. He hugged me. It was a quick, perfunctory gesture. The hug one gives a distant relative. "We'll call you from the ship," he promised. I just nodded and walked to my car. The drive home was quiet. The gospel station was playing, but I didn't hear the music. I heard Jennifer's voice. Not for people your age. I heard my son's silence. My house was dark when I arrived, save for the small lamp I always left on in the living room. It smelled of lemon oil and old books. It smelled like home. The grandfather clock in the hall, a wedding gift from James's parents, ticked its steady rhythm. Tick, tock, the sound of my life passing. I put the uncut pie on my own kitchen counter. I looked at it, a perfect circle of my effort and my love rejected. I didn't cry. The time for tears was over. Crying was a request for comfort. I was no longer making requests. I walked into the living room and sat down in my velvet chair. It held me. I closed my eyes and let the silence of the house settle around me. The ticking clock was the only sound. A countdown. Or a count-up. What was my age? I was 73. I had buried a husband. I had raised a son. I had survived segregation, navigated recessions, and witnessed the world change in ways that would make a person's head spin. I had learned to use a computer to see pictures of my grandchildren. I had voted in every election since I was able. My age was not a number. It was a library of experiences, a testament. And they thought the world was not for me. They who had seen so little of it. They who mistook a cruise ship, a floating hotel with a buffet, for the world itself. A thought bloomed in the stillness of my mind. It was not an angry thought. It was not a vengeful thought. It was simple. It was pure. I will go see the world. Not their curated, week-long, all-inclusive version. The real one. The one that was messy and beautiful and vast. The one that James and I had always talked about seeing. We had a jar. The someday jar we'd put money in it every week. For Paris. For Rome. For the pyramids in Egypt. After he passed, I had stopped putting money in the jar. Someday had died with him. Or so I had thought. I got up from the chair. My movements were slow, deliberate. I went to the hall closet and pulled out the small wooden stool. I carried it to the top shelf of my bedroom closet, where I kept things I didn't want to look at every day. Behind a stack of old quilts, I found the jar. It was heavy with coins and folded bills. I brought it down and set it on my bed. Then I went to my dresser and took out my bank book. I had been foolishly frugal my whole life. James had a good pension. We had owned our home outright for 20 years. I had money. My money. Not David's inheritance. My life. I sat on the edge of the bed, the bank book in one hand, the dusty jar in the other. The clock in the hall chimed midnight. A new day. The decision was made. There was no fanfare. No triumphant music. Just the quiet click of a lock turning in my soul. A door opening. The next morning I woke up before the sun. I did not do my usual 2-mile walk. I had other things to do. I made my chicory coffee strong and black the way I liked it. I sat at my kitchen table, the uncut pie still on the counter, and I made a list. On a crisp sheet of paper from my writing desk, with my good fountain pen, I wrote 2 words. Mr. Franklin. He had been James's lawyer. A kind, serious man who had helped me sort through the mountain of paperwork after the funeral. I hadn't spoken to him in years. I found his number in my old address book. The ink was faded, but the name was clear. I waited until 9 o'clock sharp and I made the call. His secretary put me right through. Elara, he said, his voice warm with surprise. How are you? I am well, Mr. Franklin, I replied. I need to make an appointment. I need to make some changes to my affairs, of course. Is everything all right? Everything, I said, is becoming clear. He gave me an appointment for the following afternoon. Next on the list. I wrote bank. I dressed carefully. A simple navy dress, my good leather handbag, and the string of pearls James had given me for our 40th anniversary. I was not a grieving widow today. I was a woman with business to attend to. At the bank, I asked for the branch manager, a young woman named Sarah with bright, intelligent eyes. I had a joint savings account with David. His name had been put on it years ago, just in case I became unable to manage my own affairs. Just in case I became a person of another age. I would like to close this account, I told Sarah. And I would like to move the entire balance into a new account, in my name only. She looked at the screen, then at me. This is a significant amount, Mrs. Collins. Are you sure? I am positive, I said. My voice did not waver. There was paperwork. Signatures. Took nearly an hour. As she stamped the final form, she looked at me with a small conspiratorial smile. Doing a little reorganizing? You could say that, I said. The third item on my list was one word: travel. I didn't go to the agency in the mall that David and Jennifer used. I found a small independent one downtown, run by a woman whose picture on the website showed her standing in front of a temple in Thailand. She looked like she knew the world, not just the resorts. Her name was Anya. She had kind eyes and a wall covered in maps with pins stuck in them. Where would you like to go? She asked, her pen poised over a notebook. I took a deep breath. Everywhere, I said. She laughed, a nice open sound. All right. Let's narrow it down a bit. What do you want to see? I want to see the Eiffel Tower at night, I began. I want to walk through the lavender fields in Provence. I want to see the art in Florence that my husband always read about. I want to hear music in a small club in New Orleans. I want to see where my ancestors came from. Maybe Ghana. Or Senegal. I talked for 20 minutes. I told her about the someday jar. I told her about the dream James and I had shared. I didn't tell her about the cruise. I didn't tell her about my son. This was not about them. This was about me. Anya listened, nodding, taking notes. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. That's not a trip, she said softly. That's a journey. How long do you have? The words came out before I had even thought them through. A year, I said. I have a year. Her eyebrows shot up. A year-long world tour. For 1 inch she smiled, a genuine dazzling smile. I love it. This is the most exciting thing I've worked on all year. We talked for 2 hours. We looked at maps. We discussed budgets. She spoke of planes and trains, of small, charming hotels and long-stay apartments. It was dizzying. It was exhilarating. This is a big undertaking, she said, looking at me seriously. It will take a few weeks to put together a proper itinerary and get everything booked. I have the time, I said. When I left her office, the sun was bright. I felt light, as if I had set down a heavy bag I hadn't even realized I was carrying. I drove home and for the first time I cut a slice of the sweet potato pie. I sat at my kitchen table and ate it slowly, savoring every bite. Tasted like freedom. The next day, I met with Mr. Franklin. His office was filled with dark wood and the smell of old paper. It was a serious place for serious business. I was serious. Elara, it's good to see you, but you look like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, he said, gesturing for me to sit. No, I corrected him gently. I am about to see the world. That's a different weight entirely. I explained what I wanted. First, to revoke the power of attorney I had granted to David 5 years ago. Second, to draft a new will. He listened patiently, his fingers steepled under his chin. May I ask what brought this on? I considered telling him the whole story. The years of small slights, the casual dismissals, the slow erosion of my place in my own family. But I didn't. The reasons were mine. The actions were what mattered now. James and I worked hard for what we have, I said simply. I intend to use it to live the life we planned. And I want to ensure that my final wishes reflect my own choices, not the expectations of others. My old will left everything to David. A simple, straightforward inheritance. The house? He asked. I'm selling it, I said. The words felt strange and powerful on my tongue. Most of the contents will be sold or given away. And the new will? I want to set up a trust for my grandchildren's education, I said. Michael and Sophie. It will be managed by you. The remainder of my estate I want to divide. A portion to my church. And a portion to my granddaughter Simone, my daughter's girl. My daughter Sarah had passed from cancer 10 years ago. A loss that was still a raw place in my heart. Simone was in college in another state. She was a good girl. She called. She remembered my birthday. She asked about my gardenias. And David? Mr. Franklin asked quietly. David, I said, the name feeling foreign, will receive $1. To show he was not forgotten, but deliberately excluded. Mr. Franklin showed no surprise. He was a lawyer. He had seen every permutation of family drama. He just made a note on his legal pad. I'll have the documents drawn up, he said. It will take about a week. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of quiet activity. I was a woman on a mission. I met with a realtor, a kind woman from my church, Sister Hattie. She walked through the house with gentle eyes. This house has seen a lot of love, Elara, she said, touching the frame of the front door where James had marked the children's heights. It has, I agreed. And now it's time for it to hold another family's love. I began to sort through a lifetime of possessions. It was not sad. It was liberating. Each object I let go of was a tether I was cutting. I packed a single trunk with the things that truly mattered. My husband's letters, my daughter's photograph, the family Bible with its pages of births and deaths, and the quilt my great-grandmother had made from scraps of old work shirts and Sunday dresses. The rest was just stuff. During this time my phone would ring. It was always David or Jennifer. I didn't answer. The first few times they left cheerful, oblivious messages. Hey Mom, just calling to say hi. Hope you're doing well. Talk soon. I would listen to David's voice, so full of casual confidence, and I would feel nothing. A strange, peaceful emptiness. Then I would press the number 7. Delete. After a week, the tone of the messages began to change. Mom, it's me again. Are you getting these messages? Call me back. We're getting a little worried. Worry was a new emotion for them to apply to me. They were never worried when I was sitting in my house, waiting for their call. They were only worried by my absence, by the disruption of their routine. Delete. Then Jennifer's voice, tight with annoyance. Elara, this is ridiculous. David is very upset. You need to call us. We need to know you're okay. We have to book flights for my parents and we need to confirm the dates, the cruise. I had almost forgotten. Delete. The silence was my answer. It was my conversation. For years I had filled the silence with my presence, my pies, my patience. I had made myself available, accommodating. I had absorbed their thoughtlessness and called it love. No more. Now I was giving them back their silence, and they did not know what to do with it. One afternoon my granddaughter Simone called. Her name on the screen made my heart do a little jump. I hesitated, then I answered. Grandma? Are you okay? Her voice was young and full of genuine concern. I'm fine, my love. More than fine. Mom and Uncle David are freaking out, she said. They said you're not answering your phone. I've been busy, honey. There was a pause. Then she said so softly I almost missed it. Grandma, I heard what Aunt Jennifer said. At dinner that night. About the cruise. My breath caught. I'm so sorry, she whispered. It was a horrible thing to say. And I'm sorry Uncle David didn't say anything. I wanted to, but I froze. Tears pricked my eyes. The first tears I had shed through this whole ordeal. Not for my son's neglect, but for my granddaughter's empathy. To be seen. It was a powerful thing. It's not your place to fight your uncle's battles, Simone. I told her, my voice thick. But thank you. Thank you for seeing. So, are you okay? She asked again. I'm making some changes, I said. It was the simplest way to explain it. Good changes. For me, good, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Good for you, Grandma. You deserve it. We talked for a while longer about her classes, about a boy she liked. Normal things. It was a balm to my soul. Before we hung up, I said, Simone, I'm going to be traveling for a while. I'll be hard to reach by phone, but I'll send you postcards. And I'll email. Traveling? Where are you going? Everywhere, I said, and for the first time I laughed. A real joyful laugh. The for sale sign went up in my yard on a Tuesday. I knew it would not take long for them to find out. I was right. By Tuesday evening, the voicemails had escalated from worried to frantic. Mom, what the hell is going on? Hattie from church called Jennifer. She said you're selling the house. The house I grew up in. You can't do that without talking to me. Call me. Now the rage in his voice was startling. He was not angry for me or with me. He was angry at the loss of his control, at the disruption to his inheritance. The house he grew up in was also the house I had lived in for 45 years. The house where I had nursed my husband until his last breath. It was mine. The deed, like my new bank account, was in my name only. Delete. I spent the evening sitting on my porch drinking iced tea and listening to the cicadas buzz. The gardenias were in full bloom, their scent heavy and sweet in the humid air. I felt a profound sense of peace. The storm was coming, but I was in the eye of it. Calm. Still. The next morning, a car screeched to a halt in front of my house. David and Jennifer. They marched up the walkway, their faces thunderous. I was expecting them. I met them at the door. I did not open the screen door. I spoke to them through the mesh. It felt like a boundary, a necessary one. Mom, open the door, David demanded. He was using his father's commanding tone, but it didn't fit him. It was a costume he was wearing. No, I said quietly. He was taken aback. What do you mean, no? We need to talk about this. Selling the house? What are you thinking? Are you having some kind of episode? Is this about the cruise? Is this some kind of punishment? Jennifer stood behind him, arms crossed, her expression a mixture of fury and contempt. This is incredibly manipulative, Elara, she spat. I looked at my son. My boy. His face was red with anger. His eyes filled with a confusion he couldn't hide. He did not see a woman making a choice. He saw a problem to be managed. This is not a punishment, I said, my voice even and low. Punishment is for children. This is a consequence. For adults, a consequence for what? He shouted, his voice cracking. For trying to plan a family vacation? No, David, I said. I looked past him at the oak tree James and I had planted when he was born. It was tall and strong now, its branches reaching for the sky. It's a consequence for forgetting who I am. It's a consequence for your silence when your wife told me that the world was not for people my age. You see, you thought my world was this house, this neighborhood. You thought my world was small enough to fit into your plans. I paused, letting the words settle. I have decided to go and see for myself if the world is for me or not, Jennifer scoffed. Oh please. Where are you going to go? To a retirement home? You're selling your house out from under yourself. My plans, I said, looking directly at her, are none of your concern. My finances are my own. My house is my own. And my life, I added, my voice dropping to just above a whisper, is my own. David just stared at me, his mouth slightly open. I think in that moment he was finally seeing me. Not as his mother, the fixed point in his universe, but as a person. A separate human being with her own thoughts, her own pain, and her own power. The sight seemed to terrify him. Mom, please, he said, his anger deflating into a weak plea. Let's just talk about this. We have nothing more to talk about, I said. I have heard everything you have to say. For years I have heard it. Now I am going to listen to myself. And with that I closed the main door. Gently. I didn't slam it. I simply shut it. I turned the deadbolt, the click echoing in the sudden silence of the hall. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. I could hear them outside talking in low, furious tones. Then the sound of a car door slamming and tires squealing on the pavement. They were gone. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel happy. I felt clean. As if I had finally washed away a layer of grime that had been coating my skin for decades. The house sold in a week. The closing was swift. I signed the papers and the life I had known was officially over. I moved into a small furnished apartment across town for the final weeks before my departure. It was anonymous and liberating. Anya, my travel agent, had worked miracles. She presented me with a thick binder. Inside was my year. A detailed itinerary of flights, trains, and hotels. Paris, then a slow journey through Italy. A flight to Athens. A month in a small cottage on a Greek island. Then Egypt. Kenya. A flight across the world to Japan for the cherry blossoms. A train through Vietnam. Australia. New Zealand. And finally, a slow journey home through South America. It was audacious. It was magnificent. It was mine. The day before I left, a package arrived. A beautiful soft leather-bound journal and a new fountain pen. The card was from Simone. For your adventures, Grandma. Write everything down. I want to read it all someday. I love you. I'm so proud of you. I packed it in my carry-on bag. My first stop was Paris. I arrived in the evening. My hotel room was small, but it had a balcony that overlooked a narrow street filled with cafes and bakeries. The air smelled of rain and baking bread. I didn't do anything grand that first night. I just sat on the balcony with a cup of tea and watched the city live. I wrote in my new journal. Journal entry. October 12, Paris. I am here. 3 words. They feel bigger than the whole sky. For so long. Here was a single house on a single street. Now, here is a city I've only ever seen in pictures. The ticking of the grandfather clock has been replaced by the sound of a language I don't understand, and the murmur of 1,000 lives I don't know. I am 73 years old, and I feel as if I have just been born. There is a strange peace in being a stranger. No one here knows me as a mother or a widow or a grandmother. I am just a woman sitting on a balcony. It is more than enough. The days that followed were a revelation. I walked until my feet ached, and then I would sit at a cafe, drink a café au lait, and just watch people. I went to the Louvre and stood in front of the Mona Lisa, but I found more beauty in a small, quiet room of Dutch portraits. The face is so full of life and character. I ate things I'd never tried before. I bought a bright red scarf from a street vendor and wore it everywhere. I learned to say bonjour and merci and pardon. I was clumsy and slow, but people were patient. They smiled. From Paris, I took a train to Florence. I saw Michelangelo's David. I stood in the Uffizi Gallery for hours, letting the art wash over me. James would have loved it. I felt his presence there, not as a sad memory, but as a joyful companion. I spoke to him in my mind, telling him what I was seeing, imagining his delight. I sent Simone a postcard from every city. I didn't write much, just a few lines. Saw David today. He is as magnificent as they say, or ate the best pasta of my life in a tiny restaurant in Rome. I received emails from her. She told me about school. She told me that her uncle David was a wreck, that he kept saying he didn't understand. Of course he didn't. Understanding would require him to look at himself, and that was a journey he was not yet brave enough to take. In a small village in Tuscany, I took a cooking class. I learned to make pasta from a woman named Sophia who was older than me and had hands gnarled with arthritis, but who moved with the grace of a dancer in her kitchen. We didn't speak the same language, but we communicated through flour and eggs and the shared joy of making something beautiful with our hands. Journal entry, December 5th. Tuscany. Sophia patted my cheek today and called me brava brave. It's a word I never would have used for myself. Patient, maybe. Enduring. Quiet. But not brave. And yet, what is bravery if not the quiet refusal to be invisible? What is it if not the decision to choose a different story for yourself, even when the ink is fading on the page? Maybe bravery is just buying a plane ticket. Maybe it's just saying no after a lifetime of saying yes. Christmas came. I was in Athens. On Christmas Eve, I went to a midnight service at a small Orthodox church. The air was thick with incense, the chanting ancient and beautiful. I did not understand the words, but I understood the feeling. The sense of reverence, of community. I thought of my family, on their cruise ship in the warm Caribbean. I wondered if they thought of me. I felt a pang of something. Not loneliness, but a kind of distant sorrow for what was lost. But then it passed. I lit a candle for James and one for my daughter Sarah, and then I lit a third one for me, for the woman I was becoming. After the holidays I flew to Accra, Ghana. It was a pilgrimage, a journey home to a place I had never been. The moment I stepped off the plane, the air was different. Warm, humid, scented with spice and earth. It felt familiar. I visited the slave castles at Cape Coast. I stood in the dungeons and walked through the door of no return. The grief there was immense, a palpable presence in the stone walls. It was the grief of my ancestors. I wept. I wept for them, for the unimaginable loss. And in doing so, I felt a part of my own story click into place. My resilience was not just my own. It was inherited. It was in my blood. Journal entry. February 16th. Cape Coast, Ghana. I stood today where my ancestors stood. I am the daughter of the women who survived, the ones who endured the unendurable. My own hurts seem so small in the face of this history, and yet they are part of the same thread. The fight to be seen, to be valued, to be free. My journey did not begin when I booked a plane ticket. It began centuries ago in a place like this. And I have a duty to them, the ones who survived, to live my freedom fully. To not let anyone make my world small ever again. From Africa I flew to Japan. It was spring, and the cherry blossoms were in bloom. It was like living inside a painting. The quiet dignity of the culture soothed me. The beauty of the gardens, the precision of the tea ceremonies, the kindness of the people. I learned to sit with silence, not as an absence but as a presence. I spent a week in a monastery in Khorasan, waking with the monks at dawn, eating simple vegetarian meals, and walking in the ancient cedar forests. The months unfolded like a beautiful map. Vietnam with its chaotic energy and delicious food. Australia with its vast open spaces and strange animals. New Zealand where the mountains seemed to touch the sky. I was no longer just a tourist. I was a traveler. I stayed in places for weeks at a time. I learned the bus routes. I found a favorite cafe. I made temporary friends, other travelers, shopkeepers, the woman who ran the small guest house where I was staying. I was changing. My body felt stronger from all the walking. My mind felt sharper. I was becoming more confident, more open. I smiled at strangers. I started conversations. The quiet, accommodating woman I had been was still there, but she was no longer in charge. As the year began to wind down, I was in Peru. I had always wanted to see Machu Picchu. I took the train up the mountain, the scenery growing more dramatic with every turn. It was more incredible than any picture. The stone city, nestled in the clouds. I was not young. I could not hike the trails like the backpackers in their 20s, but I found a quiet spot on a terrace, away from the crowds, and I just sat. For hours. I watched the clouds move and the sun play across the ancient stones. A young woman came and sat near me. She was sketching in a notebook. After a while she looked at me and smiled. "It's something, isn't it?" she said in English. "It is," I agreed. "It makes you feel very small and very large at the same time." "I know exactly what you mean," she said. We fell into an easy conversation. She was from Canada, taking a year off before medical school. She asked me about my travels. "You've been traveling for a year? By yourself?" she asked, her eyes wide with admiration. "That is the coolest thing I have ever heard, the coolest thing." I smiled. Jennifer thought I should be at home being comfortable. David thought I was punishing him. And this bright young woman with her whole life ahead of her thought I was cool. My year was coming to an end. It was time to think about what came next. Going back to my old town held no appeal. My home was gone. My life there was over. I had been emailing with Simone regularly. She was graduating from college in the spring. She had a job lined up in a new city, a place with mountains and a vibrant art scene. An idea began to form. A new chapter. My last stop was New Orleans. The music, the food, the spirit of the city. It was a celebration. I went to jazz clubs. I ate beignet and let the powdered sugar dust my coat. I listened to a gospel choir in an old church in the Treme that made the hairs on my arms stand up. On my last night, I sat in my hotel room and looked at the binder Anya had given me. It was worn now, the pages filled with my own notes and ticket stubs. A record of my journey. There was a letter waiting for me at the hotel, forwarded from Mr. Franklin's office. The postmark was from my old town. The handwriting was David's. I held it for a long time before opening it. My heart was calm. There was no anger left. No bitterness. Just a quiet curiosity. The letter was short. Mom, I don't know where you are, but Mr. Franklin said he would get this to you. I've had a lot of time to think this past year. The house is sold. Your things are gone. It's like you vanished. First I was angry. Then I was just lost. I remember what you said at the door. About my silence. You were right. I heard what Jennifer said and I said nothing. It was easier. I have spent my whole life doing what is easier. You spent your whole life making things easy for me. I never saw that until you were gone. I don't know what to say other than I am sorry. Not just for the cruise but for everything. For all the times I didn't see you. I hope you are okay. I hope you found what you were looking for. David. I read the letter twice. It was the first honest thing he had said to me in years. An apology. A real one. I folded the letter and put it in my journal. I didn't know if I would reply. Not yet. Forgiveness was a landscape, not a destination. It would take time to travel. The door to his life, which had been slammed shut, was perhaps now cracked open a tiny bit. But it would be up to him to keep it from closing again. It was not my job to hold it open for him anymore. The next day, I flew to the city where Simone now lived. I had rented a small, sunny apartment in a building with a garden. It was a new place. A new start. Simone met me at the airport. She ran to me, wrapping me in a hug that was strong and real. Grandma, she said, pulling back to look at me. You look amazing. You look happy. I am my love, I said. I am my new life is simple. It is quiet. I have my own small garden on my balcony. I've joined a choir at a local church. I take art classes at the community center. Simone comes for dinner every Sunday. I make roasted chicken and collard greens. I bake sweet potato pie and she always has a second slice. Sometimes I take out my journal and my binder full of maps and memories. I look at the pictures I took. A sunset over the Nile. A field of lavender in Provence. A smiling monk in Kyoto. They told me the world was not for people my age. They were wrong. The world is for anyone who is brave enough to claim it. My final journal entry from the night I arrived in my new home. Journal entry. October 1st, home. Home. It's a new word, a new feeling. It is not a house I have lived in for 40 years. It is not a place where I am needed. It is a small apartment with good light. In a city where I know only one soul. And it is enough. I have learned that my home is not a place on a map. It is the space I occupy in my own life. For years I gave that space away to others, letting them furnish it with their expectations, their needs, their casual neglect. The journey of this past year was not about seeing the world. It was about reclaiming that space. It was about coming home to myself. The world is vast and beautiful. But the quiet dignity of a life lived on one's own terms? That is the most magnificent view of all.